So, Greg, Everton lost 1-0 at the weekend to Arsenal. You were at the Emirates Stadium. What did you make of the match?
It was a really solid rearguard action. Everton weren't necessarily set up to only defend. In actual fact, they played 4-4-2 and played quite a high line, which did leave them vulnerable on the counter-attack. And there was clearly a motive to get more than just a point. I don't think you could accuse Moyes of starting out with a deliberately defensive tactics. And they did defend, but having said that, they did defend very well and reduced Arsenal. At the same time, Arsenal in the first half could really have been 2-0 up by half-time. And that was just because they had such speed and numbers on the counter-attack. And like I say, Everton did play quite a high defensive line. And it was only really Theo Walcott lacking that little bit of extra finesse in our penalty area that probably saved us. But nevertheless, second half the Blues improved slightly, and the fantastic performances from like John Heitinga and Tony Hibbert in defence, and probably deserved maybe a point really for that resilience. But then when you're undone with a goal, the quality of Robin van Persie, is very, very little you can do about it. Perhaps Song could have been stopped from playing a long ball, but Tim Howard was faultless. It was just a wonderfully executed first time volley, and as David Moyes said before the game, you take Van Persie out of their team, a goal scorer out of their team, and they're a mid-table side, but with him in it, they're going to win games, and that's what they did.
I mean, it's interesting to mention Van Persie and what was an amazing goal.
Yeah.
It sort of brings into contrast really what Johnny Heitinga said after the game about Everton needing some experience up front to help them find more of a cutting edge. What did you make of what he said?
Yeah, I could see where he was coming from. Absolutely. I mean, it was interesting that he was very complimentary about Van Persie after the final whistle, but on the pitch, as typically with Heitinga, there was no quarter given, and they were going head to head, literally head to head at one point. Kind of tempers were boiling over, and no love lost between the international teammates. But Van Persie obviously has got the natural ability and the experience now, and he's just clearly making a massive difference to Arsenal's season, and that's the one thing that Everton don't really have. I mean, yes, they have Louis Saha, who has a lot of experience, but for one reason or another it just isn't happening for him lately. We saw him limp off injured again on Saturday, and before he'd gone off injured he'd been struggling with cramp in both calves. He missed last week's game against Stoke, and he just can't, with the best will in the world, be relied upon. So take Saha out of the equation, and there's you're looking at young, untested, unproven potential rather than sort of experience and quality, and that was the major difference. And like Moyes said, that is the difference that someone like Van Persie makes.
So I guess what we're saying is Everton would need someone of equivalent calibre to Saha to help him out up front, and take some of the pressure off the youngsters.
I think so, yeah. They need somebody who's, Van Persie, obviously Saha's 32, Van Persie's kind of like, I think he's in his late 20s, but he's been around the Premier League for a long time, and I think that's what Everton need to sign, is somebody who's got experience, whether it's in the Premier League, they've got experience in the top European division. They've been around the block a bit. Maybe they've been to some big tournaments with their country, or maybe they've played in the Champions League, or just a sort of like wise older head to support Saha, and somebody who can handle maybe playing in a more advanced position, and it's imperative. It really is. And I think, as John Heitinga said, that Everton have a lot of experience. They've got a right blend in defence and midfield. But when you look at those striking options, take Louis Saha out of the equation, as unfortunately so often you have to with his injury record, and you're just left with teenagers really, and a guy from Argentina who's come over and not really done much yet. So it's an area where they're really struggling, and it's an area that continues to hamper them.
So I guess in the no secret to say, in the transfer window, the upcoming transfer window in January, that has to be the priority for Everton. I mean, do you see that's the same feeling within the club as is being felt on the terraces?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a truism now. It's almost fact. That's absolutely where the priority has to be. Now, it's easier said than done, because you have a number of inhibiting factors when it comes to finding that striker that you need with experience. First is that David Moyes doesn't really know his budget yet. He's not quite sure how much money he's going to have to spend, so that makes his job more difficult. Secondly, the January market can be very difficult to work in for managers. It's often clubs are reluctant to sell, and players who are going have a premium, and so the value might sort of rise, not really in accordance with their actual ability, but the value might rise kind of, to something that makes them not really worth that much. But it's academic for Everton, because Everton will only have so much to play around with anyway. So David Moyes, as usual, is left with a difficult balancing act to try and, whether he's looking at people who are available on loan, which is most likely the route he'll follow, or people who are available for free. And the thing is, it's not just strike up front where he has to try and target, really. That's obviously his priority, but he needs some more creativity in his midfield. The possibility of Stephen Pienaar coming back on loan has been mooted. Whether they can persuade Stephen Pienaar and Tottenham to do that deal remains to be seen. And he really could do with some pace down his flanks, particularly down his left flank as well. So it's going to be a busy month for David Moyes. Hopefully there'll be some significant incomings to Goodison Park, certainly in terms of what they bring to the team, if not quite in the transfer tags or anything like that.
I mean, it wasn't all sort of bad news, apart from the like you say, the great rearguard action. There was another Everton youngster who made his debut. What did you make of him?
Yeah, Conor McIlhenny came on not long to go, but almost had a very, very big impact on his debut. He almost scored. He's a quick young lad, Liverpool born, got an eye for goals, been banging them in for the reserves, and he showed what he's got within sort of minutes of being on. He was played through, turned and hit a volley across goal, which is difficult to do anyway, and it was we're literally talking a matter of inches wide. It was a great effort, and really gave the Emirates a shock and a bit of a scare there that was going to spoil their party. Now Conor was on the Blues tour of America pre-season, and was one of the big optimistic points of that as well. He was scoring for fun. He's carried on that scoring form for the reserves. David Moyes obviously given him his chance on Saturday, and I think we'll see more of him this season. I think definitely he's going to have a part to play. He offers something a bit different from what another 19-year-old Apostolos Velios offers. Conor's more about pace and getting on the shoulder of the last man, and that's something Everton do need up front. Again, no one would suggest that they can rely on him because of his tender age and lack of experience so far. It's certainly a nice option to have from the bench. And more good news on the way back from London as well. Ross Barkley was only sat a few carriages away from us on the train. Everton travelled back on the train after their match. Tweeted that he'll sign his new contract this week. So we expect that to be a 5-year deal. He turned 18 last Monday, and we understand he's going to commit certainly his long-term future to the club, and that'll be a big boost for everyone, and we hope we can see more of him as the weeks progress.